Hi, Ellen.
Screen dim.
Sorry.
Hi,
How are you?
Hi, Ellen. Hi.
I feel like I see
Hello.
everybody a lot,
Yeah.
and yet not. It's so nice.
Well, it's very comforting to know that you're all still there. You know,
Well, yeah,
It's a 1-year anniversary in New Rochelle.
that's
Yeah.
right. I heard that this morning.
supposed to make some noise.
Right, at 7 o'clock.
Oh, tonight? Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
don't remember when.
Why 11 o'clock?
At
I don't know.
7.
Oh, 7.
Yeah.
7 for the healthcare workers, I think.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Thank you.
Ooh, my look is
We
off.
got a call from the mayor.
Right back.
Hi,
What's
Bethel.
something's happening tonight at Bethel? I heard that first.
I don't know. You want me to look on the website?
There's always something at Bethel. Tonight, there's a conversation for families with
Children.
interfaith marriages.
Right, right.
Oh, right, right.
Okay,
yeah,
Rose,
Eddie.
Let's
Right.
talk about it.
Let's
It's
talk
K-Rose,
about it.
K-Rose,
That's,
Right.
yeah.
K-Rose, yeah.
Right.
And JTS is having a lecture tonight being given by Gordon Tucker
Yes.
Yeah.
on dual loyalty throughout history.
Uh-huh.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And Michael Solomonov is.
And Michael Solomonov is doing a cooking class tonight as well.
He's been doing a
Lot
lot
going
of,
on.
And he's talking about his brother who died on Yom Kippur, I
right.
think 2 years ago, 3 days before he's supposed to be out of the army.
Oh.
Sad.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people are coming on.
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
So we'll give it another minute.
We need 1 minute. Yes, thank you.
So David got his second shot today and there was no line at the county center. It was
Wow.
Oh,
in and out. It was
Mazel tov.
very
I'm
quick,
going this weekend for my second.
Oh, good.
very well organized.
Yes.
Yes, I found it that way when I went for my first. They're processing a lot of people, but it's very well organized.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I went to Stop and Shop last night for the first time in a year, going
Wow.
into a store. We
Wow.
went at 10:45 at night.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was nobody there. We got all of our Passover stuff and got out.
Oh, I don't want to hear about people getting Passover stuff.
I bought a couple of things this morning at the Chico's in Pelham. They don't have a big selection, but I wanted to encourage them to keep stocking stuff like that.
Right,
right.
Sure.
Right.
Idea.
So I
Good
bought
idea.
Joy.
a
Yeah.
few things.
Joyce, was it a culture shock to go into a store?
It was. I was double masked with a face shield.
Wow.
Oh, my.
Well,
Okay,
I
so
went to Minion this morning for the first time in the shul in a year.
wow.
Yeah, that's also a very moving
Yeah, it
experience.
was very moving. I had
Good.
a website, so I went.
But yeah, today's my father's yard site,
Oh, my mother's
Oh.
too.
which is just kind of co-inky dink. So when Rabbi Sitkin provided me with dates, I just looked at the dates, and it turns out that today is my father's yard site. So I'd like to dedicate whatever I'm teaching today in his memory.
Nice.
My father was born in the tailor shop of the Algonquin Hotel in Omaha, Nebraska.
oh,
Wow.
And my grandparents had a previous child who had died at birth, and when my father was born, he apparently wasn't moving, and they were preparing to take him out to be buried, and he started moving,
Oh,
and so they brought him back. But that's part of that story.
Wow.
So we're going to be looking at a speech that was delivered by Abraham Joshua Heschel in 1953. It still resonates for all kinds of reasons. Just to give us a little bit of background on who Heschel was. He was born in 1907. He was the product of eminent Hasidic families on both sides. His paternal great-great-grandfather was Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of Apt. He had a yeshiva education. Growing up in a Hasidic family, it probably should have stopped there, but he said that he wanted to go to university. So he went to his mother's brother, to his uncle, and he said, "Can I go to university?" And his uncle said to him, "You can go, but only you." And so he went to the University of Berlin. He was ordained at the Hochschule für die Wissenschaft des Judentums. He was deported back to Warsaw in October of 1938. He left Warsaw August 31st, 1939.
Oh,
He referred to himself as a brand plucked from the fire. He will go to London, where his brother was serving as a rabbi. And in March of 1940, he arrives in New York City prior to accepting a position at HUC. He'll be at HUC for 5 years, and then he's appointed professor of ethics and mysticism at JTS. He was not well viewed at JTS because he was from a Hasidic background. He was not a Talmud scholar. He was not viewed as a Bible scholar. He taught in the School of Education. He taught in the Rabbinical School. He did not teach in the graduate school. And stories are told that many of his students would sit and read the New York Times with the paper open while he was teaching. Just to give you a little bit of background. All that being told, he is a prolific writer already. Now remember, he's born in Warsaw. His first language was probably Yiddish. His second language may have been Polish. His third language was German. He wrote poetry in Yiddish as a young man. English was probably his fourth or fifth language. But he already is writing in English. In 1951, he publishes a work called Man Is Not Alone, which kind of sets him up as being a person of note. And in 1953, he's invited to speak both to a group of conservative rabbis and reform rabbis, both of whom are having their conventions in the summer of 1953. And he is invited to speak at the Breakers in Atlantic City. Some of you may have heard of that place. It was well known. That's a site of many USY conventions in subsequent years. There was some concern about the quality of synagogue life. As suburban synagogues are being built, they're not quite sure what to do with suburban synagogues. And so both the Reform movement and the conservative movement asked Heschel to come and define his ideal of prayer. So what's the future of prayer in American suburban synagogues? All right, so let's take a look and see what we have in front of us. I'm sharing my screen, which hopefully you can see. Can you just nod your head if you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, you see it. Good. Okay, let me just move this over here. Okay, I have it set at about 125%. So it's a little bit larger. So hopefully this will make it easy or easier to read. So he begins his speech in a whole series of interesting ways. What I've done is, while this does appear in other places, this is from the original transcript from the Rabbinical Assembly Convention, because I want to look at some of his language that remains untranslated in Hebrew, but there are some keys to what he is saying and how he's saying it. It's with a great sense of, with a sense of great responsibility that I undertake to discuss with you such a sacred topic, a topic which is called one of the most sublime things in the world, Dvarim Haomdim Baromo Shel Olam. Now, one of my teachers, as Rabbi Shuck often points out, one of my teachers pointed out to us that whenever you see a Hebrew verse, you have to read the verse before it and the verse after it, and you have to read the whole verse, because otherwise you miss some of the meaning. So here is a quote from the Talmud, from Brachot 6b. These are matters of utmost importance. That's as far as the Hebrew goes here. But then it continues, Uvnei Adam mezalzalin bahen, which people nonetheless treat with contempt. I am going to discuss not only the spirit of Jewish prayer, but also the state of prayer in the present day synagogue. The time has come for a cheshbon hanefesh. Cheshbon hanefesh is an accounting of the soul. We recognize that phrase, cheshbon hanefesh, because that's the phrase we use between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The convention met the week before the 17th of Tammuz, which means it met some 7 or 8 weeks before the Yomim Noraim of 1953. So already setting this up as we're going to do some critical analysis of our souls. And then he continues, Nachbisha darchenu unchokora v'nashuva ad Adonai. Let us seek out ways and search them out, and let us return to God. All right. So and then the phrase continues, let us lift up our hearts in contrition with our palms in prayer to the Almighty in heaven. Nasa levavenu el kapayim el bashamayim. So again, he's taken a phrase from, in this case, from Lamentations. So again, Lamentations will be about 4 weeks after he's delivered the speech of Tisha B'Av. So let's seek them out and let's return to God. To find a cure, we must have the courage to study the ills. In advancing some critical remarks, I do not mean chas v'shalom, to take a superior attitude. In all honesty, my criticism will be to a considerable degree self-criticism. I am conscious of the great work which members of this assembly are doing, and it is with respect and affection that I address my remarks to this audience. Moreover, the numerous conversations with some of my own former students assembled here tonight give me the right to feel that I'm not going to speak to you, but for you. I am going to be, in a sense, your shaliach tzibur. And then he says, Hinani ha'ani mima'as nirash mifachad nifchad v'nifchad yoshev tilot Yisrael. Do you recognize that phrase at all?
Yes.
Yes.
It's from where?
From Yom Kippur.
From Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It's the Hinani.
Right.
Here I stand, impoverished, in merit, trembling in the presence of the one who hears the prayers of Israel. So this prayer, this piyut, is from the 16th century. It is asking that it's a private prayer from the Shaliach Tzibur, the emissary of public prayer, that the service be conducted properly, that the people might be inspired, and God might be moved by the pleas of the congregation. Okay, and then he goes on to af al pi, even though, okay, I am not fit and prepared for this task, God, open my lips so that I may recite your prayers. I speak to you on prayer, af al pi, she'eni kedai b'chanun lachach, Adonai svatai tifach ufi yagid tilatecha. So here he set himself up. What's he doing? What do you think he's doing?
He's preparing you for the not so positive news.
Right. He's getting it set up.
Right. And he's saying that, I'm come to you, I'm humble. I have to tell you something that's not so good, but I speak to you I know you're trying, but it's not succeeding.
Okay. So he's saying very much that, and he says he's asking Adonai svatai tiftach, God, open my lips, all right, so that I can speak. It's somewhat, look, we also ask that before we start our Amidah. And also there's a reference here, I think, to Moses and Aaron. And Moses said, I'm not really a good public speaker, so God appoints Aaron to be his public speaker. But Aaron is going to say what Moses tells him to say. And here it is the notion of being able to speak openly, honestly, and from the depths of one's heart. So Heschel says, our services are conducted with pomp and precision. The rendition of the liturgy is smooth. Everything is present. Decorum, voice, ceremony. But one thing is missing: life. One knows in advance what will ensue. There'll be no surprise, no adventure of the soul. There'll be no sudden burst of devotion. Nothing's going to happen to the soul. Nothing unpredictable must happen to the person who prays. He will attain, I'm just shifting over the page. He will attain no insight in the words he reads. He will attain no new perspective for the life he lives. Our motto is monotony. Mashaya hu shihyeh ve'en kol chadash beveit hakneset. Okay, what has been will be, and there is nothing new in the synagogue. Okay, he's taken the phrase from Ecclesiastes, nothing new under the sun. He says there's nothing new in the Beit HaKnesset. The fire has gone out of our worship. It is cold, stiff, and dead. Inorganic Judaism. True, things are happening. Of course, not within prayer, but within the administration of the synagogues. Do we not establish new edifices all over the country? Yet, yes, the edifices are growing, yet worship is decaying. We used to refer to this as the edifice complex. Any comments so far? How do you feel?
I think there's a lot of people that would say, gee, it's true now.
One of the reasons I wanted to go through it, right? He's still speaking for the second and third generations after 1953.
It sounds to me like what led to Hasidism, that the worship with song and dances, from what I recall from a course. Yeah.
Okay, he does come out. He comes out of that background. He is going to come out of the Hasidic world. He is in America, which is coming not out of that particular world. All right, there was a break. Hasidism actually will emerge in the 18th century because things were really rather stale and boring in the Jewish world. And so you're going to have this breakout with the Baal Shem Tov and the creation of 18th century Hasidism. So then it continues. Has the synagogue become the graveyard where prayer is buried? Are we, the spiritual leaders of American Jewry, members of the Chevra Kadisha? There are many who labor in the vineyard of oratory, but who knows how to pray or how to inspire others to pray? There are many who can execute and display magnificent fireworks, but who knows how to kindle a spark in the darkness of a soul? Some of you may say, I'm going too far. Of course, people still attend services. But what does this attendance mean to them? Outpouring of the soul? Hitashchut hanefesh? Worship? Prayer. Synagogue attendance has become a benefaction to the synagogue, a service of the community rather than service of God. Avodat HaTzibur, service of the community, rather than Avodat Hashem, service of God. People give some of their money to UJA and some of their time to the synagogue. So let's look at this phrase that he has here about Hishtapchut HaNefesh, the outpouring of the soul. It actually is a collection of teachings from Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav about Hitbodedut and paths of meditation. It was also reflective of material from an earlier contemporary, the Baal Shem Tov, who said, if I would have golden wings, I would fly to you. If I would have golden wheels, I would travel to you. If I would have a horse and saddle, I would ride to you. If I would have ink and pen, I would write to you. If I would have a golden ring, I would give it to you. What's he reflecting? What's he reflecting? What do you think he's reflecting? All right, there's no nefesh. There's no spirit. There's no sense of connection. This is really a longing. The modern synagogue suffers from a severe cold. Our congregants preserve a respectful distance between the Siddur and themselves. They say the words, forgive us for we have sinned, but of course they are not meant. They say, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart in lofty detachment and complete anonymity, as if giving an impartial opinion about an irrelevant question. How are we feeling, folks? And everything. What?
Is he trying to win friends?
And influence people, right? Okay, and these are rabbis he's talking to. Remember, he's talking to rabbis. He's not talking to the Balabatim. An air of tranquility, complacency prevails in our synagogues. What can come out of such an atmosphere? The services are prim, the voice is dry, the synagogue is clean and tidy, and the soul of prayer lies in agony. You know, no one will scream, no one will cry, the words will be stillborn. People expect the rabbi to conduct a service, an efficient, expert service. But efficiency and rapidity are no remedy against devotional sterility. Orthodox rabbis worry about the bima being in the right place. What about the heart being in the right place? What about prayer? So what's he say? What's he say?
He's railing against complacency.
He's railing against complacency.
I think he's being very hard on people.
He's being very hard on people.
See, I don't think.
I think you can't say all. I have learned you never can say all synagogues are like that. you know, they've made, you know, when you say everybody and all, it's not an appropriate way of describing a situation.
Say what you want.
But it might have represented a significant percentage of the population.
I mean, a lot of times we talk about just saying things, we learn the prayers by rote and we're not getting our heart into it, our sense of connection to something spiritual.
Breaking up.
Oh, is my connection bad again, Judy? I'm sorry.
It's good. It's fine.
Oh, okay, because
It's all right.
we've had internet problems. Anyway, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's trying to encourage people to reach inside and to pay attention to what they're doing.
And we have to put this in historical context.
I was just going to say that.
Just a
Okay.
few years after the Shoah,
Right.
but we are in safety, relative safety and comfort in the United States. So complacency in the shadow of the Shoah is probably particularly disturbing to him.
Yeah.
Okay. Carol?
Yeah, I think what Joyce is saying is very important. The historical context. That was a time of conservative triumphalism where they built these big buildings. It was Max Arts who said, we have an edifice complex. The problem was, as soon as you built these very big edifices, I know personally, I look for Hishtapchus HaNefesh on Yom Kippur. I'm getting it more from Gabi and from familiar service, but for years I was looking for a little Hishtapchus HaNefesh on Yom Kippur, and I didn't get it. But now rabbis are very aware of this kind of an essay, and they're working very hard. And the big issue in the conservative movement is the creation of community. The Orthodox, Vicky was saying she works with Joyce and it's in their DNA to go to the minyan. But, we're working very hard to create community. And that's almost as important as prayer, all right? So, we're looking for kavanah, it's true. And I think it would be good for people to also try to learn Hebrew.
Okay, let's get back to Heschel. Joyce?
So I was going to say, I think it goes back even further than that, when our grandparents came over, many of them wanted to assimilate.
Right.
I'll talk just about myself. When I went to Hebrew school, I didn't learn what I was saying. I didn't learn the meaning. And I think if you went into an average conservative or reformed synagogue, they have no idea what the prayers are saying. So how do you relate spiritually if you don't know what you're saying? And that was our education.
Yeah, Judith.
I think Ellen hit on something. His Hasidic background. If you've ever been in a shul where Hasidim are praying, there's a lot of supplication. Oh God, Abinu Malkeinu, help us see the way. There's a lot of supplication, and there's actual crying when they daven. And I think his seeing the conservative way is a stark contrast.
Okay, so I just remember he gave the same speech, a similar speech to both Reform rabbis and conservative rabbis in 1953.
I think it applies to both.
And he's also speaking also to the Orthodox who are more concerned about where you're going to put the bimah.
That's their
He's talking about religious behaviors, and we're going to get to it. He's going to be condemning.
That sounds a little cynical to me.
I think it's a little cynical. But also remember that we're talking about a time and a place when perhaps we were putting a tremendous amount of emphasis on the head and very little on the heart. One of the areas in which I think we in the conservative movement have failed is we have not really worked on the Kishka piece.
So do you think that the Hasidic community, there's a big drinking culture in the Hasidic.
I don't want to go there.
Okay.
That's not where I'm going. I
don't think that they're an example of.
They won't be. We're going to get there, Carol.
Good, very
because
good.
Heschel is going to. Heschel is going to condemn religious behaviorism. People
Okay.
who go through all the motions but have nothing behind them.
Good to you.
All right, so he's condemning lots of people for not doing certain things.
Right.
Right. So if we can ask you, put everybody on mute, or ask you to please mute yourselves, we'll go back to the shared screen. Where'd you go, Heschel? Why is he not coming up? There he is. Okay. So, we have developed the habit of praying by proxy. Many synagogues, many congregants seem to have adopted the principle of vicarious prayer. The rabbi or cantor does the praying for the congregation. In particular, it is the organ that does the singing for the whole community. Too often, the organ has become the shaliach tzibur. Indeed, when the organ begins to thunder, who can compete with its songs? Men and women are not allowed to raise their voices unless the rabbi issues the signal. They have come to regard the rabbi as a master of ceremonies. It is not their mood in part a reflection of our own uncertainties. Prayer has become an empty gesture, a figure of speech, either because of lack of faith or because of religious bashfulness. We would not admit that we take prayer seriously. It would sound sanctimoniously, if not hypocritical. We are all too sophisticated. But if prayer is as important as study, prayer is as precious a deed as an act of charity, we must stop being embarrassed at our saying a bracha with kavanah, saying a bracha with full intentionality. Ours is a great responsibility. We demand that people come to the synagogue instead of playing golf or making money or going on a picnic. Why? Don't we mislead them? People take their precious time off to attend services. Some even arrive with profound expectations. What do they get? What do they receive? Sometimes the rabbi even sits in his chair wondering, why did all these people flock together? Spiritually helpless, the rabbi sits in his chair taking attendance. Any comments?
I mean, I think one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the reasons Rabbi Shuck wanted to have us redo the sanctuary was because otherwise it was more like a theater. And his thing is, Judaism is not a spectator sport.
Right.
That we should all be participating and doing our part rather than watching and listening to what's going on up on the stage. It's not a show, it's not a performance.
Okay.
And that we should be, doing our part.
Anybody else? Just a reflection. When we redid the synagogue in Dobbs Ferry, we had to redo it for a whole variety of reasons, and we had the final proof when we were taking out the air conditioning before doing some work, and the entire roof collapsed. But when we redid the synagogue, I asked for the pews to be removed and to set up the bima in the middle, surrounded by chairs. And I had real pushback. Because people were not happy with the idea. And I was very much concerned with this notion of vicarious prayer, of people kind of sitting back. Now, remember that the classic synagogue space until the middle of the 19th century had a center bima.
Right.
It would only be toward the end of the 19th century, in Vienna and elsewhere, that they moved to theater-style seating. And why do they move to theater-style seating?
Was it more like church?
People came to hear the chazan. It was like going to the opera. Because if you were in church, even classic churches were set up in such a way that you will have a central altar surrounded by seats all around. But again, the design of synagogue shifted in the 19th century. And again, you have this, and what was happening is in America specifically, synagogues began picking up the practices of Protestant churches. So rabbis didn't give sermons in Europe, maybe twice a year. In America, we started getting sermons every Shabbat because that's what they did in Protestant churches. The way seating was arranged was somewhat, you kind of face the altar. And then also and we're going to get to it later on in Heschel, in what direction does the officiant face during prayer? Any other comments? Let's go back to, Michael, you had a comment?
Michael, that's you.
I have a lot of comments, but no.
Okay. There's another privation. And here I think we're going to get into what Barbara was talking about. And I think that it's the loss of chen. Chen is a technical term. It's grace, it's beauty, it's gentleness, it's charm. Our prayers have so little charm, so little grace, so little chen. What is chen? The presence of the soul. A person has chen when the throbbing of his heart is audible in his voice, when the longings of his soul animate his face. Now, how do our people pray? They recite the prayer book as if it were last week's newspaper. They ensconce in anonymity, as if prayer were an impersonal exercise, as if worship were an act that came automatically. The words are there, but the souls who are to feel their meaning, to observe their significance, are absent. They utter shells of syllables, but put nothing of themselves into the shells. In our daily speech and uttering a sentence, our words have a tonal quality. There's no communication without intonation. It is the intonation that indicates what we mean by what we say, so we can discern whether we hear a question or an assertion. It is the intonation that lends chen to what we say. But when we pray, the words faint on our lips. Our words have no tone, no strength, no personal dimension, as if we did not mean what we said, as if reading a paragraph in Roset's Thesaurus. It is prayer without chen. Of course, we offer them plenty of responsive reading, but there's little responsiveness to what they read. No one knows how to shed a tear. No one is ready to invest a sigh. Is there no tear in their souls? Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then is not the health of the daughter of my people recovered? Assembled in the synagogue, everything is there, the body, the benches, the books. But one thing is absent, neshama. It is as if they all suffered from spiritual absenteeism. In good prayer, words become one with the soul. Yet in our synagogues, people who are otherwise sensitive, vibrant, arresting, sit there aloof, listless, lazy. Lo hametim hallelujah. The dead do not praise God. Those who are spiritually dull cannot praise the Lord. That we sense this is a problem is evidenced by the many valiant but futile attempts to deal with it. The problem, namely, of how to increase synagogue attendance. A variety of suggestions have been made to bring the Siddur up to date by composing shorter and better prayers, to invite distinguished speakers, radio commentators, and columnists, to arrange congregational forums, panels, and symposia, to celebrate annual projects such as Jewish Culture Sabbath, Jewish War Veteran Sabbath, Boy Scout Sabbath, Interfaith Sabbath. Why not a Sabbath? To install stained glass windows, to place gold, silver, blue pledge cards on the seats, to remind people of their birthday dates. Well-intentioned as these suggestions may be, they do not deal with the core of the issue. Spiritual problems cannot be solved by administrative techniques. Any comment?
He's right on.
Wow.
He's right on.
So let me share a story. We are no longer in 1953. We are many, many, many years later. I will share a story. This is a true story. We were invited to the bar mitzvah of a close friend. Our older son might have been 10. We are in a synagogue, and it comes time for the Shema. And as the cantor begins singing the Shema, our 10-year-old, facing forward with the entire congregation, begins singing along with the cantor, at which point the cantor stopped.
Oh my gosh.
Stopped,
Oh
turned
my-
around, until our 10-year-old stopped singing along.
I love it.
The synagogue should remain anonymous,
Wow.
but it is part of what is going on in terms of a neshama within the soul, within the shul. Now, one of the things that I've noticed in many synagogues in the last generation of rabbis is that we now have nigunim. We now have much more chance for prayer without words. And much the same way that a shofar is a sound without words and sends out prayer by virtue of the sound, similarly, these nigunim are helping to enhance the sense of something going on in the synagogue,
You
where
are
it's
the
not just an
only one
illumination.
who's here.
I thought that at the beginning.
And Michael, you said no?
One of the things that went through my mind is, they're talking about the conservative and the reform shuls. I think to a great extent, that was true of Orthodox shuls as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was not limited to.
No. It was the mid 20th century synagogues writ large, especially the larger ones.
Yes.
I mean, the comment was made already in the mid 20s or 30s. In Orthodox shuls, people were not crying during Yizkor. There was a time and place where there were tears during Yizkor. There were actual wails during Yizkor, and things became very decorous in many, many places. So I think that Heschel is calling it the way he sees it. He also is, he's an outsider. He didn't grow up in America. He grew up in Warsaw in a Hasidic shul, albeit a large Hasidic shul. And he is coming in, and he was prescient in many, many ways. And there's this great phrase in Hebrew. I wanted to check out the source of the phrase because as I was reading through the material, there's this glorious phrase in Hebrew, Ein Navi Be'iro.
Right.
Okay, there's no prophet in his own town, right? So I said, great quote. Where is it in the Talmud? I've got to find that quote in the Talmud. It's not in the Talmud. It's in the book of Matthew. But here you have, again, we have Heschel being particularly alert to and aware. So he says here, the problem is not how to fill the buildings, but how to inspire the hearts. This is a problem to which techniques of child psychology can hardly be applied. The problem is not one of synagogue attendance, but one of spiritual attendance. The problem is not how to attract bodies to enter the space of a temple, but how to inspire souls to enter an hour of spiritual concentration in the presence of God. The problem is time, not space. And then he's going to go in, and we're going to skip through the next sections because it's a little more than we have time for, but I want to look at just the highlights of the next section, in section 2. It says, prayer is an extremely embarrassing phenomenon, and numerous attempts have been made to define and explain prayer. I will briefly mention 4 of the prevalent doctrines of prayer. The first is the doctrine of agnosticism. The doctrine of agnosticism claims that prayer is rooted in superstition. And then he says there are some people believe the only way to revitalize the synagogue is to minimize the importance of prayer and convert the synagogue into a center. It is something which the Talmud characterizes as avon, as a sin. Al shekorin la'aron aron hakodesh arnana, Al shekorin beit hakneset beit am, that these are people who call the ark a table, and those who call the beit hakneset a people's house. Let us face the situation. Just as man cannot live without a soul, Judaism cannot survive without God. Our soul withers without prayer. A synagogue in which men no longer aspire to prayer is not a compromise, but a defeat, a perversion, not a concession. To pray with kavanah may be difficult. To pray without it is ludicrous. So then the second, the doctrine of religious behaviorism. This way I talked about before. There are some people who seem to believe that religious deeds can be performed in a spiritual wasteland in the absence of the soul with a heart hermetically sealed, that external action is the essential mode of worship. All as if all that mattered is how men behaved in physical terms, as if religion were not concerned with the inner life. As long as you do what you're supposed to do in the right way you're supposed to be doing it, that's all that's necessary. He calls it sacred physics. Then he goes on in the next section. There's another definition of prayer being perpetuated all over the country in sermons. Prayer is the identification of the worshiper with the people of Israel, or the occasion for immersing ourselves in the living reality of our people. It is built on a theology which regards God as a symbol of social action, as an epitome of the ideals of the group, as the spirit of the beloved community, as the spirit of a people insofar as there is the world of humanity, the spirit of the world, as the creative good world, the creative goodwill. All right, so here we're talking about peoplehood. We're talking about identifying with the people of Israel. He's not hiding it very much here. This is his zets to Mordechai Kaplan. The doctrine of prayer is, as a social act, the product of what may be called the sociological fallacy, according to which the individual has no reality except as a carrier of ideas and attitudes derived from a group existence. All right, so that's his third. And then you have the doctrine of religious solipsism, that the individual self is the whole sphere of prayer life, that God is an idea, a process, a source, a fountain, a spring. One cannot pray to an idea. One cannot address his prayers to a fountain of values. To whom do we direct our prayers? Yes, there's an answer. As a recent writer put it, we address prayers to the good within ourselves. It says that prayer is a useful activity. It's good for one's health. And then he says, we are descendants of those who taught the world what true worship is. Our fathers created the only universal language there is, the language of prayer. All men in the Western world speak to God in the language of our prayers, of our psalms. Is it not proper to ask our fathers, what is the spirit of Jewish prayer? But are we ready to ask the question? Are we qualified to understand the answer? The difficulty of our situation lies in the fact that we've inherited physical features of our fathers, but failed to acquire some of their spiritual qualities. Biologically, we are Jews. Theologically, we are pagan to a considerable degree. Our hands are the hands of Jacob, but our voice is often the voice of Esau. There are bitter problems which religion has to solve: agony, sin, despair. There is darkness in the world. There is horror in the soul. What has the community of Israel to say to the world? Gentlemen, remember back then it was just male rabbis. We worry a great deal about the problem of church and state, synagogue and state. Now, what about the synagogue and God? In fact, sometimes there's a greater separation between the synagogue and God than between the synagogue and state. Now, what qualifies a person to be a rabbi? What gives him the right, the privilege, represent the word of God to the people of God? I've been told in the United States of America, I've been in the United States of America for 13 years. I have not discovered America, but I have discovered something in America. It is possible to be a rabbi and not believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Prayer is the microcosm of the soul. It is the whole soul in one moment, the quintessence of all of our acts, the climax of all our thoughts. It rises as high as our thoughts. Now, if Torah is nothing but the national literature of the Jewish people, if the mystery of revelation is discarded as superstition, then prayer is hardly more than a soliloquy. If God does not have power to speak to us, how should we possess the power to speak to him? Thus, prayer is a part of a greater issue. It depends upon the total spiritual situation of man, upon a mind within which God is at home. Of course, if our lives are too barren to bring forth the spirit of worship, if all our thoughts and anxieties do not contain enough spiritual substance to be distilled into prayer, an inner transformation is a matter of emergency. And such an emergency we face today. The issue of prayer is not prayer. The issue of prayer is God. One cannot pray unless he has faith in his own ability to accost the infinite, merciful, eternal God. Moreover, we must not overlook one of the most profound principles of Judaism. There is something which is far greater than my desire to pray, namely God's desire that I pray. There is something which is far greater than my will to believe, namely God's will that I believe. How insignificant is the outpouring of my soul in the midst of this great universe. Unless it is the will of God that I pray, unless God desires our prayer, how ludicrous is all my praying. We cannot reach heaven by building a Tower of Babel. The Jewish way to God is the way of God. God's waiting for our prayer is that which lends meaning to them. What's he suggesting? What's going on here?
Well, he's suggesting that we're not connected enough, that we have to pray because God wants our prayer, and we have to work at that connection in order for it to happen.
Okay. And anybody else?
But is he giving a path for us to do that? How in the environment of time, we need a little, it's a give and take, experience when you're
Okay,
saying,
all right. Okay, there's a relationship. Carrie? You had your hand up? Or is this, no, okay.
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Okay, so it is, we are in relationship with God. God wants our prayer. What's the rabbis have taught amazingly that in the absence of a temple and the absence of sacrifice, what replaces sacrifice?
Prayer.
Prayer, okay? The technical term for prayer is avodat halev, the service of the heart. What's a sacrifice?
A service of things.
It's giving something up. It's giving something up, something that is of value to us. In baseball, what's a sacrifice fly?
Giving up a run.
Right, you let someone else get the run. You sacrifice your own scoring.
Okay, you sacrifice your own ability to score for yourself,
Yeah.
so somebody else can do it.
Mhm.
All right. My teacher, Elliot Dorff, who is a remarkable teacher, uses baseball as a wonderful analogy for the difficulty of prayer. And he says that every time we go to pray, we're at bat. So let me ask a question. If one bats 300, is that a good batting average?
Yeah, but you're not doing it 100% of the time, but it's
not.
good.
It's not. It's
only like a third of the time.
It's a third of the time, but you have a 300 batting average is seen as pretty good. All right. So you're at bat. All right. So if you hit a single, is it good?
Yes.
Not bad at all. You haven't struck out.
Right.
Okay. All right. So you get a single. Now you get a double. Also not bad. A triple's even better.
Mm-hmm.
Home run would be lovely. What's a grand slam?
Goes out of
Get
the
everybody else in.
Everybody comes with you. So in the prayer moment, in those at-bat moments, we may get a single, we may get a double, occasionally a triple, and oftentimes the bar bat mitzvah kid hits a home run and a grand slam and brings the entire congregation along with that child. There is a moment of real significant meaning that happens in prayer because we allow ourselves to get into that moment. We allow ourselves to actually get to be at bat. Now, that's very much against what Heschel's talking about of being vicarious prayer. Vicarious prayer means you're sitting up in the stands. You're up in the stadium, okay, as opposed to being right there, okay, which is also what the sense is in terms of many younger rabbis are now seeking to rearrange synagogue space. So there's a greater notion of everybody being part of the, you're in the bullpen. You're ready for your coming up to be at bat in some way, shape, or form. That it's not a distancing, but it's being brought closer. It is a korban. It is a coming close to God. Lekarev means to sacrifice. It also means to come close to. How many times when Jews come to the synagogue, do they sit in the back row? It's a phenomenon that happens in Protestant churches and Catholic churches too. Nobody wants to sit up front. It's like nobody wants to sit in the front row in school either. The reason you're in the front row in school is because the teacher wants to make sure you behave, right? But you'd much rather be in the back. But here the notion is also within the prayer moments is to get us into moments when prayer has meaning, when prayer has substance, when prayer has significance. So what we're going to do is, as we come to the end of our time today, we're going to kind of keep that in mind for next week. We're going to go into Heschel's next couple of sections as he moves us forward. But try and imagine yourselves if you were one of the rabbis sitting and listening to him speaking. He was not well viewed. He was not well viewed. People did not like what he had to say. But then he said something. I'm going to give this to you now so you have a sense of where he's coming from, because he didn't backpedal, but he had to say something that was really important. And I think this is something that we rabbis don't do enough of. People presume that prayer is easy for rabbis. prayer is very hard for rabbis. Prayer is very difficult for rabbis because rabbis are very much concerned about making sure that everybody who is in shul has some kind of a spiritual experience. And so Heschel said the following: I am profoundly embarrassed by the inadequacy of my praying. I have no peace of mind, nor do I submit to despair. I've been wrestling with the problem all my life as to whether I really mean God when I pray to him, whether I've even succeeded in knowing what I'm talking about and whom I'm talking to. I still don't know whether I serve God or I serve something else. So just kind of keep that in mind. So he's coming from a place not where he has mastered the art, but he's struggling with the same problem. And he's recognizing what the difficulty is. Any comments, any thoughts?
Is this taught at the beginning of rabbinical school at JTS now?
It was not. It is now part of the curriculum. I will tell you that our son learned it when he was at JTS. Rabbi Shuck and Rabbi Sitkin learned it at JTS. I encountered it after.
I'll just say, I think that he was right on. I could see why the rabbis were upset, but I can relate to everything that he's saying, having grown up in the 50s.
Right. I mean, he really is spot on. He really is spot on in terms of what he's saying, but he's also giving us, if we don't think about it, if we simply accept everything the way it is. Look, when I entered rabbinical school, women were not given aliyot. Women were not in rabbinical school. I was part of a group that formed something that was called Ohel Matilda. Ohel Matilda was an egalitarian service held at Matilda Schechter Residence Hall, off-site from JTS, where women could participate equally with men in parts of the service. Right, so it's not, it seems like forever ago, but it wasn't.
What year was that, Barry?
I came to New York in 1976. So in 1976, in the fall of 1976, we got permission from JTS to conduct an egalitarian service at Matilda Schechter Residence Hall.
Yeah.
Under certain very specific conditions.
And at Bethel, it was in, this is not our distant history.
No.
Right.
For how many years, up until what
When
year
did
did
it
we
get-
still have the alternative service? And
When I was when I came to Greenberg, when I came to Dobbs Ferry in 1984, we were not egalitarian. We worked on it as a process for several years. I think it was 1988 or 89 when I sent my letter to the congregation spelling out what a whole process had spelled out as the way this would line up over the course of multiple years. Back then, we didn't have email. I sent an 8 or 10 page letter to the congregation with all the rationales, with all of whatever needed to go. After 2 or 3 years of intense conversation, discussion, working it through in committee after committee after committee, and my vice president of religious affairs came to me the day after the mail was delivered and said, "Rabbi, demonstrate true rabbinic leadership and rescind your decision."
Well,
But if we're talking here, things have made tremendous progress at Bethel. Tremendous progress. Much to the chagrin of some people who don't like making progress.
You know, I think it took us 25 years, Bob, to come to, I mean, this was not an immediate decision. 25 years we were at it. because about the egalitarianism. And you know what was interesting on the homosexual issue? You know, on the gay issue, I think it took 25 minutes, 25 days. You know, they had agreed, and I was shocked out of my head with that because, you know, I had been talking to my brother who's Orthodox, and he said this was the end of the conservative movement, the acceptance of gays, you know. And we had a debate, I don't know if you remember, between Gordon Tucker and Joe Roth. You remember that? And he said, Joe Roth said, I have credentials in this field because I have a 60-page responsa on women's participation, and I agreed that they should participate through my response. It was in Judaism magazine in 1984. He says, so I have credentials, and if you do this, it will be the end of my life. I will have given my life for nothing. And Gordon told me later, he said, you know, he was very dramatic, he was whatever he was. But that was major, and yet the homosexual issue went very quickly. I remember that. It was shocking.
We've come to the end of our time.
Okay.
There is, however, a wonderful video, and the name of it escapes my mind at the moment, but it is about Orthodox gay men trembling before God.
Yes.
Trembling before God.
Yes.
So I think that there has one of my teachers who grew up in Europe, the notion of homosexuality in the Orthodox world was a known phenomenon. How it was dealt with was in a variety of ways. This is not a new problem, issue, circumstance, whatever. I think it did happen far more quickly, but I think we can probably also see that the relationship between men and women's roles has a whole other history
Definitely.
that goes behind it.
Yeah.
So we have to end here.
How many sessions do you
There are
guys
three.
have?
We're having 3 sessions. We decided not to have a session the Wednesday before Pesach because we're all going to be busy the Wednesday before Pesach. So I hope to get through all the material. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very much.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.